The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Digital Risk in the Dark Web, Protecting Your Most Valuable Assets. I'm Angie Yazilaitis, and I'll be your facilitator for today's session. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with just a few housekeeping items. So today we're going to provide you with some really important education, and we want you to stick around for a chance to engage with our presenters at the end. They're going to do a Q&A session. So we will use either the chat feature or the question feature, and you should see both of those to the right of the screen. So you can go ahead and send questions over as you think of them. Just know we'll be holding off on answering them until the end. The other thing I want to tell you is we're recording today's session, so we'll share it with you over the next week or so. And we encourage you to go ahead, share it with your coworkers or professionals that you might know. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I'm, as always excited to introduce you to our presenters, Singer Keating and Katie Wallace. And I've been blessed to work with Reclamere for quite some time now. And for any of you who may be new to Reclamere, let me tell you a little bit about them. So Reclamere is one of the leading data destruction and data security companies in the business. In fact, they've been in business for 20 years. Or just about 20 years, and provide a team of highly skilled professionals that tailor services to your organization's needs in data destruction and data security. And they are a NAID AAA certified company and the only ones in Pennsylvania with $5 million in downstream data liability coverage. And that's important to their clients. So let me introduce Angie first, Angie Singer Keating, not to get confused with me. Angie is the Chief Executive Officer. She has a diversified background with over 20 years of experience specializing in data destruction, security incident response, information technology risk management, and systems auditing. Angie and her team of Reclamere data security experts provide consultancy in e-discovery and litigation support, forensic analysis, data breach response, notification and compliance and risk management services. So all very important services. Angie is also the chief architect of the proprietary data destruction system used by Reclamere. She is a certified information systems auditor, a certified information privacy professional, and a certified information security manager. Outside of work, she also has a long-term and active membership with the National Association for Information Destruction, NAID, which is now known as I-Sigma, where she is also the past president. At NAID, she served on the National Board of Directors as the Certification Rules Committee chairperson and co-chairperson of the Solid State Destruction Subcommittee. On top of all that, Angie also serves on the board of directors at the Ben Franklin Technology Partnership and still serves as an adjunct faculty for the Pennsylvania Bar Institute. She earned a degree in electrical engineering technology from Pennsylvania State University. Angie, as always, thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you, as always, for hosting for us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I also want to take a minute to introduce Katie Wallace. Katie is Reclamere's dark web expert, which is the topic we're delving into today. And so we're excited to have her with us. She brings expertise to help both the public and the private sector organizations detect and mitigate cyber threats that leverage stolen email addresses and passwords. So with all of that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Katie to get us started. Katie?
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Angie, for that wonderful intro. You know, like Angie mentioned, today we're going to focus on the changes of our security landscape and look at the ways that our information becomes exposed. You know, with changes to our work environment, we've seen an increase in cyber criminals trying to profit from our information. Unfortunately, cybercrime is run like a business where these cyber criminals are making money off of our data. Modern cyber attacks, such as something as sophisticated as a phishing attack, can be profitable, even with a seemingly low success rate. The cost of launching a phishing attack is low and can singly yield thousands or even millions of dollars in revenue for a cyber criminal. With all this being said, the dark web is a huge marketplace for stolen data and personal information after a hacking incident or a data breach. After a data breach or a hacking incident, personal information and business information is often bought and sold on the dark web, again by these identity thieves looking to make money off of our good name and any number or information associated with us or a business. You may ask, why not just shut down the dark web if it's only used for crime? The dark web isn't just a safe haven for criminals. The dark web was initially created by the U.S. Department of Defense for whistleblower situations, allowing sources to remain anonymous. And the dark web is often used by a lot of folks in countries with repressed speech. Now, whether you watch your local or national news, you've likely heard a new news story that has mentioned, again, phishing attacks, ransomware, or even data breaches. These opportunist crooks or cyber criminals, again, are exploiting the coronavirus as part of their attempts to even gain access to our information. Outside of COVID-19 related attacks, Capital One, Equifax, and Facebook are just a few examples of companies who have been in the news recently for going through breaches. Remember hearing about the WannaCry virus a few years back, targeting computers running on the Microsoft operating Windows? Now, with the WannaCry virus, cyber criminals were, deploying a ransomware virus onto computers. That ransomware virus was then encrypting data. And what cyber criminals were doing when they had your data encrypted, they were demanding some form of payment in cryptocurrency, likely Bitcoin. With WannaCry virus or something that happens like that, these attacks don't have to be as notorious to take an entire company down. There's unfortunately one thing as well that all of these attacks have in common, and that's the human element. Whether it's a data breach, a phishing attack, a ransomware attack, your employees are your number one risk. You can have the best firewall in place, but all it takes for your company to fall victim to a ransomware attack is an employee sharing their credentials in a phishing email. Or maybe your employee clicks on a bad link on the internet, and in just one click, your entire network can be affected. To really paint this picture for you, here are some examples of third-party applications that we all use in our everyday job function. Given how many platforms our businesses use on an everyday basis, we don't have to connect too many dots to realize that we've got information that cyber criminals want and can sell on the dark web. Think about all the data that lives behind sites like this. Sites like Amazon, where you may order office supplies. Sites like your customer CRM, where you hold your customer records. Your ADP account, or potentially where you hold your payroll information, and any financial information that your company has. With these websites and these third-party applications, keep in mind what connects us to these websites. It's our email addresses and passwords. When a cyber criminal accesses your email addresses and passwords, they don't just steal your information. They can also use your email account to distribute malware or launch phishing attacks targeting your contacts. Also, unfortunately, when these fraudsters get a hold of our email addresses and passwords, they go through an automated process to start firing endless variations on multiple websites. And because so many people reuse the same password across multiple logins, it becomes highly possible for this cyber criminal or fraudster to get into your bank account information using stolen credentials from your Coffee Loyal program. We'll actually get into this topic a little bit later on in the presentation, but think about this. Think about not just in your business life, but your personal life. How many accounts and logins that you've created in the last year? It's probably over 100 at this point, because just about every website or service requires you to create a login or share your information. Now, if you reuse passwords, again, you're putting yourself at risk. No matter the size or the industry that a company is, all businesses, we must adhere to certain data privacy laws or regulations as part of our operations. And in all honesty, we should be no stranger to data privacy laws. Since 1996, doctors' offices have needed to be compliant with our health records by abiding by the HIPAA regulations. And just like medical offices, businesses need to be aware of any compliance laws they face. The state of New York just rolled out the New York Shield Act, and it now joins states like California, Massachusetts, and Pennsylvania and having government-mandated regulations surrounding how its residents' data is handled. Pennsylvania itself is one of 24 states that requires customers to be notified without reasonable delay when a data breach occurs. Being negligent to these regulations can impose even larger fines, unfortunately, in the scenario that your company or business falls victim to a ransomware or a data breach attack. You know, we've talked a little bit about what the dark web is. We've looked at some of the different ways that our information is winding up in that space and why it matters. But now I just want to share some examples of actual phishing attacks and different websites that are on the dark web. Just to circle back around phishing, because it's a term that I've mentioned several times during this presentation. I'm not talking about going fishing in your local stream or your local lake. I'm talking about phishing emails. You know, phishing is an attempt to acquire personal information such as usernames, passwords, or financial information via impersonation or spoofing through email. While the COVID-19 outbreak has disrupted the lives and operations of many people and organizations, the pandemic failed to interrupt the onslaught of spam and phishing emails targeting people's inboxes. Cybercriminals, you know, they're criminals. They don't have many operational constraints, so they can quickly respond to breaking events and incorporate them into their campaigns. The earliest days of COVID-19 outbreak left a lot of people confused or worried, and attackers predictably tried to prey on their anxieties. At the same time, the surge in remote work has increased the attack surface, potentially exposing employees to known cyber attacks that might have been blocked behind security controls set in place in a corporate setting. You know, here's an actual example of a phishing email that was going around related to COVID-19. Researchers reveal that cybercriminals are primarily using 3 phishing attack methodologies to target victims. They are brand impersonation. Just as a little bit of a fun fact, Microsoft actually remains the #1 spoofed brand by cybercriminals. Outside of brand impersonations, cybercriminals are scamming us. Cybercriminals always have a sense of urgency within their phishing emails. And unfortunately, another avenue that cybercriminals are going with these phishing attacks are through business email compromise, meaning a cybercriminal's gotten a hold of your email address and password somewhere. They've back-channeled their way into your Office 365 or Gmail account. And again, they're sending emails on your behalf to your customers posing issues. Here's just a few more spine-chilling statistics on COVID-19 phishing scams that have made headlines around the world. There has been an unprecedented rise in phishing scams, with more than 85,000 confirmed phishing and counterfeit web pages reported just in Q1 of 2020 this year. You know, besides more than 4 million pages falling into the category of suspicious on the internet, the alarming issue is that nearly 30% of these confirmed phishing pages, you know, pertain to COVID-19 alone. Though the first COVID-19 related phishing scam surfaced by the end of January of this year, the figure for March of this year was we saw an increase of over 60,000% in phishing attacks alone. 18 million malware and phishing emails are more likely going out surrounding COVID-19 than, you know, Gmail is receiving every day. Citizens in the US have lost somewhere around $12 million to coronavirus-related phishing attacks, and in the UK, it's just over $2 million. So we were one of the hardest hit countries surrounding these phishing attacks related to COVID-19. The COVID-19 outbreak, again, it has kept the world on its tenterhooks. The FUD, or the fear factor, the uncertainty and the doubt, and the non-availability of a reliable cure or vaccine, it's the primary reason for, you know, the panic that has created in people's minds. I'm showing an example of this email because this email that we're particularly looking at was meant to look like it was from a trusted source. I'm saying this because thus, when you receive an email like this and you're encountered with an email from a seemingly influential source like the CDC or the WHO or another prominent, you know, health agency, people rarely check on the authenticity. They just believe what are in these emails. You know, I want to mention we need to find legitimate information around the coronavirus And to do so, it's smart to go directly to the reliable source. That includes your government offices and healthcare agencies. With the phishing emails going around, again, they're preying on the fear, the uncertainty, and the doubt. So if you ever receive an email surrounding the COVID-19 outbreak and it's creating a level of urgency, it's likely a cyber criminal behind that email trying to scam you. Unfortunately, scam emails and scam calls are becoming more and more convincing too. In the last year alone, Americans again were swindled out of $19 billion over the phone alone. As we look at this next screenshot here, I want to talk about something that it's not as far off from the misleading emails, the phishing emails, or a phone call. It's SMS or text attacks. These text messages are being sent out by cyber criminals again to obtain our information. And the goal is to trick us into believing that the message has arrived from a trusted person or organization. Unfortunately, these text messages are not from that. And these text messages are convincing us to take an action that gives the attacker, again, information like our financial details, our login credentials, or access to our mobile device. I actually want to share a story that personally plagued me about an SMS phishing attack. Around 3 months ago, it was a Saturday afternoon. I was out running my errands. I believe I was at the grocery store. I had to make a few other stops along the way. And I received a text message. And the text message, it was from an 800 number, and it was asking me for my password reset code that was just sent to my email for quote unquote verification. Now, it took me a second because I was busy. I was out on a Saturday afternoon, saw this text message, and I was like, that's odd. I haven't been on Amazon today, but it dawned on me. An organization like Amazon would not be asking for my password reset code as a form of verification. As a matter of fact, it was a cyber criminal trying to social engineer me into sharing my reset code so he could take over my account. And in that moment, he was preying on a vulnerability because he knows most folks on a Saturday afternoon are busy doing other things. So in that moment, that cyber criminal had hoped that I wouldn't have been vigilant and I would have just shared that code. Now think about this, how busy your employees are on their everyday job functions, and they're receiving things like these phishing emails and SMS attacks and scam phone calls. It's very important that we understand these threats that are around us. And with that being said, I want to toss things back over to Angie.
Katie, thank you so much for giving us the how. How does this happen? How do our things get out on the dark web? And I just wanted to let folks know that while you've got great tips here on good email hygiene, we also did one of our most popular webinars ever back in the spring at the beginning of the pandemic on working safely from home. And in that webinar, which is recorded, it's on our website. You can go take a look at it anytime you would like. We do a really deep dive into how to protect yourself from these things. And we really spend a lot of time talking about email. So I just wanted to invite our audience to check that webinar out. It's also a great resource if you have a small business and you want to, share it for your staff as a form of one of your security awareness training techniques. But what we have here on this screen, these 7 tips are super, super important. Everyone is under stress today because of COVID. Everyone is just under stress with life in the year 2020. And so I think that's why there has been such a high success rate for cyber criminals. And at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to you because now you're going to actually take us to some sites on the dark web and show us what that looks like.
Absolutely, absolutely. And before we hop off, the topic of phishing, the webinar, absolutely check it out. There's some super helpful tips in there. I just want to leave on this parting note with the phishing. The CDC recommends that you take at least 20 seconds to wash your hands to avoid germs in the coronavirus. We honestly recommend that you take at least 20 seconds to review any suspicious emails or text messages that you receive. Just because we've seen such a rise in these attacks, and not just through email, but through text message, If you receive something that does have an attachment on it or it's seemingly urgent from a contact that you don't really speak to often, again, just review those types of emails so your company doesn't fall victim to the next data breach. With the phishing attacks being mentioned, unfortunately, these also have been made easy for cyber criminals to deploy. Now, I don't recommend that somebody uses this information to become a cyber criminal themselves, as these are highly illegal attacks. But historically, phishing, like most cyber crimes, has a technical barrier to enter. As in, you need to have at least a moderate degree of sophistication in order to successfully mount a phishing campaign. Obviously, if things are changing and there's no shortage of bad fish, I probably see at least 2 to 3 phishing emails drop into my inbox on an everyday basis. Now, in the past, phishing just wasn't something that anybody could pull off. Unfortunately, that's no longer the case. These enterprising cyber criminals have unfortunately made it easy for folks to become phishing attacks themselves or phishing attack specialists themselves. With the turnkey phishing kits and phishing as a service, cyber criminals have turned things into a subscription model with varying levels of service. Now we've taken away the technical barrier, and all you need is the right finances to purchase these kits. A straight line can be drawn down, between the availability of such kits and turnkey phishing attacks and the growth of these invasive phishing. Phishing attack tactics, again, are becoming more and more confound to the detection of security systems. So in today's reality, we are seeing more and more invasive phishing campaigns in the hands of, less technical cyber criminals. This unfortunate model has allowed the most amateur of cyber criminal wannabes to spoof targets and companies getting into their information. With that being said, I just wanted to show a side-by-side comparison of an actual screenshot from Facebook, the legitimate website, and a landing page created to look like Facebook by a cyber criminal. As you can see in these side-by-side screenshots, there's truly not much difference. And I will honestly say on the phishing kit side on the left hand, every single link that you see at the bottom of either one of these screenshots would be live on the phishing kit side. Again, cyber criminals are going the extra mile because they know that folks are a little bit more aware of these attacks, and they want you to be fooled by them. As you can see, truly the biggest difference in these two side-by-side screenshots is the URL that's being used. And unfortunately, with how busy folks are, that can be easily overlooked. In this next slide, I just wanted to share another example of a phishing kit that we found out there on the dark web. And with this particular phishing kit, it's made to look like it's mimicking eBay. And again, as you can see, on the right-hand side, we have the actual phishing kit, and on the left-hand side, we have the actual website. And it's hard to distinguish which is which, down to even the phishing kit has the Norton virus seal protection on it. So again, these cyber criminals are truly going the extra mile to get into your information. Now, I talked a lot about phishing. We looked at screenshots. We've talked about phishing as a service. Now we're going to get into the actual dark web. This screenshot is from an actual website on the dark web. This website is selling credit or debit card information. And I will say, the team of analysts that shared this screenshot with me, they let me know this is one of the most popular websites on the dark web. This site sells information from anywhere between $5 and $110. So I hate to say it, these cyber criminals aren't charging an arm and a leg for your information. They're charging modest prices. And unfortunately, by doing that, your information winds up in the hands of many more people than you want it to. This is also a full package purchase website, meaning for the fraudsters, they'll include your stolen name, your social security number, your birth date, really any account number or anything that would be associated with this card to use it effectively. Sites like this, they'll even discreetly mail you the card so your neighbors have no idea what you're up to, and then you have the physical card itself to utilize within a store. With this particular website, I'm actually going to highlight what we have in the red here. Thank you for giving us another chance to provide you with the best credit card. I'm going to circle back to how cybercrime is run like a business. Again, these websites on the dark web are meant for folks to come to and buy stuff from, like the e-commerce sites we shop from today, like Amazon and eBay. Because of that, you can even leave these websites reviews to how somebody would leave your company a Google review, because they want the support. They want to be known as a website on the dark web that's trusted. You know, as we move forward in some of these snapshots from the dark web, you know, when hackers breached companies like Dropbox and LinkedIn in recent years, stealing 71 million and then another 117 million passwords, respectively, the cyber criminals at least had the decency to exploit those stolen credentials in secret, or they sold them on the dark web for a couple $1,000s or even a couple $1 million. Unfortunately, in 2019, there was a data dump or a database found on the dark web that redefined quote unquote big. As far as data breaches go, more than 770 million account details were in that database, and that database was actually made public for all to see. In the end, its total, the database, fell around 2.7 billion people were on that list and affected. Now, this raises the question, should we be concerned? Just to kind of paint this picture a little bit more, given that 2.2 billion accounts equates to around 30% of the people on our planet, if each one of those accounts belonged to a separate individual, then yes, we should be concerned. But I have some good news today, if there's any, good news under these circumstances. Is that the database, or this data dump that was the largest dump found, it's known that this breached information was sets of different databases, meaning that this information does not appear new. Instead, yet these are more compilations of stolen data during breaches that have already come to light. However, I'm going to circle back to something that we talked about on the one slide where we saw the different businesses' logos. Because this information is old, it doesn't mean that we can sleep easy at night. Credential stuffing, or the automated attacks that cyber criminals can go through, can check an unlimited amount of websites to see where you've reused your password. And again, if you're guilty of reusing the same password across multiple logins, then you could honestly be in big trouble, because a cyber criminal could already be within your account. I think this is also kind of a timely slide given where we're at here in October moving into November. Today our voter data is just as much of a target for these cyber criminals as, let's say, our credit card, our business information, financial details, whatever it is. And this is because a lot of voter systems have poorly secured digital infrastructure. Not to pick on our government here, but voter data can be easily exposed by either a malicious hack, an accidental leak, or poorly configured security systems, again, or even the physical theft of a computer. Regardless of the point of exposure, compromised voter data usually includes sensitive and personal information. As much as voter data can be a political access, it can be a liability. In 2017, which was a few years back, however, I always like to bring light to this situation. Cybersecurity researchers at UpGuard identified a misconfigured database containing the personal details of close to 2 million US voters. The leaked database included full names of the given voter, voters' date of birth, home and mailing address, phone numbers, registered party, self-reported racial demographics, and even voter registration status, and whether they're even not on the federal do not call list. Such information, again, in the hands of a cyber criminal can be financially devastating. Now, I want to circle back to that large data dump that we were talking about, that data dump that contained the records of almost 3 billion people. The screenshot that we're looking at of the website on the dark web was actually selling that data dump. Now, that data dump, you would think, would at least cost you, what, $200, $300 on the dark web to get that much information for folks. Unfortunately, this data dump, the largest data dump, is being sold for just $10. So again, this information, it's affordable. The site that was behind selling that information was also known as Alphabet. This was a very popular website on the dark web, and in fact, this website is probably the most similar to eBay. Authorities say that Alphabet, the website, trafficked drugs, fake and stolen IDs, computer hacking tools, like those phishing kits, firearms, and other counterfeit goods. The site also facilitated such services as money laundering. Now, as a company, AlphaBay, again, was set up for success. AlphaBay went as far to hire a scam watcher to monitor and put a stop to scams, which makes me laugh because this is an already illegal website. So isn't everything a scam? However, AlphaBay also employed a public relations manager that was responsible for outreach to its users and to help broaden the illicit trade community. The site also employed a moderator to help to solve, payment or refund disputes when necessary. So again, this website is functioning very similar to how we run our businesses. Overall, how AlphaBay made its money was it took 2 to 4% commission on all the deals made on their website. And that certainly added up. The cyber criminal that was behind this website, Alexander, he had an assumed fortune of $23 million before his site got shut down. Talking about other major websites on the dark web, the major darknet website marketplace known as the Wall Street Market. This website has also been seized, and its alleged operators were arrested in a joint operation between European and U.S. authorities. I always like to mention this story as well because within the seize, millions of dollars in cash was collected, cryptocurrency, and other assets as the marketplace was being shut down. How investors tied the anemone of all of these sources and the individuals to this illegal activities and infrastructure? Well, there were 3 men that were behind running this website. And one of the larger hidden services on the marketplace was, again, having to do with the Tor browser that it operates on, and these German citizens were trying to change the way the website functions. Well, this website had an ongoing investigation on it anyway. But in 2017, there was a major push made by a crisis to stop this website. One of the operators, or one of the 3 gentlemen that was running this site, was trying to operate and execute an exit scam, meaning by suddenly removing all the cryptocurrency held in escrow that this website had and stored. The alleged owners stood to gain something like $11 million if they were able to execute the exit scam and successfully convert their cryptocurrency into payment. Well, they weren't successful. Until recently, this Wall Street Market, it was a bustling bazaar for, again, illegal goods, including dangerous drugs and physical items such as fake documents. But this website has then been since shut down. And unfortunately, all it took was the cyber criminal making one move, which in all honesty, it's best for us. Again, another timely thing that I wanted to discuss when looking at these screenshots on the dark web is these cyber criminals are also using the holiday season and COVID-19 to offer discounts. With this year's holiday season slated to become one of our biggest digital holiday seasons, leaving a huge digital footprint, we need to truly be aware about these scams. Again, countless legitimate businesses are offering discounts or altering their services to turn a profit during this time. And we saw a lot of companies do this around the start of the coronavirus pandemic. Cyber criminals are no different. A hacking group on the dark web named SS Hacker is offering Facebook account hacking services with a 15% discount with the promotional code COVID-19 on the deep dot market. Another post on the dark web is offering customer service around the clock. Another website that a cyber criminal hosts added, due to the current situation in the world, we're providing a 20% discount on all of our services with the promotional code COVID-2020 until the end of the year. Again, unfortunately, these tactics are being used by the cyber criminals to attract new buyers to their illegal websites, just like we attract buyers to our websites for our businesses. In this particular screenshot, here's a website on the dark web that is selling a list of California business owners' information. Now, with this particular list, it includes their credit scores, access to their bank account, and that sort of information, and even passwords. However, the thing that I want to highlight on this particular slide is the fact in the right-hand corner, this list was so popular that it actually sold out on the dark web. Meaning, these cyber criminals, because they want to offer that best support and they understand that the data that they're housing will eventually get caught, or people will change their passwords or their financial information. Lists only stay live for so long on the dark web. So once a cyber criminal knows they hit a certain point in sales, they often post their lists as sold out. And again, these cyber criminals on the dark web, they're surfing websites that sell out of information, because cyber criminals know the websites that sell out are the websites that get the best information. So again, it's just another attractive target that folks are using on the dark web to attract buyers. You know, the one thing that I want to mention here is, for many, bank accounts are the heart of our financial responsibilities. Identity theft, card cloners, and phishing campaigns are becoming increasingly common as ways that threat actors are attempting to crack into our financial reserves, whether it be through impersonation to your bank, cloning a debit card at your ATM, or luring you to input your PayPal details into a fraudulent website. Countless cyber criminals have been found advertising, the sale of stolen bank account information on the dark web under a marketplace called the fraud category. As listed in this screenshot, we can see high balance bank accounts with the names redacted, logins to these bank accounts that at least have $30,000 to $150,000 available. And the cyber criminal that was selling this information, he used his online nickname and wrote, "I bring you freshly hacked," the banking name was redacted, "bank account logins. The accounts are notorious for having weak security, and the listing identified the sale price is just $66.99. So for less than $100, you can have access to a bank account that has at least $30,000 worth of funds within it." Just like phishing as a service, cyber criminals has also made it easy to deploy ransomware attacks. Ransomware is a form of malware where cyber criminals attack your system with malicious code. Their intent is to lock you out of your system, not unlock you out of your system, and encrypt your most important and sensitive data. Unfortunately, just like phishing as a service, ransomware borrows its software as a service model. This subscription-based malicious model enables even novice cyber criminals, again, to launch ransomware attacks without much difficulty. Ransomware as a service took off because it tends to be much more lucrative than other breaches. And think about this: if cyber criminals are making thousands or even millions of dollars off of what somebody would consider as a non-lucrative data breach, imagine how much money a cyber criminal is making off a ransomware attack. Undoubtedly, the advent of ransomware as a service contributed greatly to the exponential growth of ransomware attacks. Again, the biggest danger of ransomware as a service is that it's made it just about possible for anybody to become a cyber extortionist. Angie, I don't know if you have anything that you want to add on this particular slide?
Oh, I definitely do. This is the one that keeps me up at night for my clients, because we see in the incident response work that we do with clients what happens from a ransomware attack. Right here locally in Blair County, there was an IT company that had a ransomware attack where every one of their clients' data was encrypted, and those companies were down for days, couldn't process payroll, couldn't process billing. And so, one of the most important services that we provide our clients, and one of the most popular, is creating their incident response plan, because it's so important to know what you're going to do if one of these types of attacks should hit you. For instance, do you have cyber liability coverage that's going to cover your business losses during a ransomware attack? Will that cyber liability coverage pay the ransom? And should you even pay the ransom? Who are law enforcement that you should be talking to? And then finally, if you decide that you're going to pay the ransom, do you even have a crypto wallet? You don't just go get Bitcoin tomorrow. There is a process that you have to set your accounts up, you have to fund those accounts, and then you have to pay this ransom. And what happens if you pay the ransom and you still don't get the encryption keys to unlock your data? So all of these scenarios, in addition to the normal scenarios of what do we do if there's workplace misconduct? What do we do if all of our systems go down because of a catastrophic electrical failure? These are all of the types of things that we cover in an incident response plan to make sure that our clients at least know that there's a plan in place and can follow that plan. And the final thing I'll say about an incident response plan is it's required under HIPAA. It's required under just about every guideline and standard. It's also required if you accept credit cards as part of your PCI or your payment card industry contractual obligation. So there is help out there, and I understand that it is very scary for a lot of business owners, but there are ways that you can prepare your company, and you can also prepare if and when, I should say when, because it's not if, but when the worst actually happens to your organization.
Absolutely, absolutely. I like that. You know, not just if, but when. It's being prepared for these sorts of attacks because, again, we're living in such a digital world. We've really seen our businesses' infrastructures change this year. And in all honesty, you know, just to kind of tie everything back together with the dark web, ransomware as a service, I wanted to show this job posting just to really drive home, again, how lucrative of a business cybercrime is for these nefarious characters. This is an actual job posting from the dark web that our team's been able to get their hands on. And again, modern attacks such as ransomware, phishing, they can be highly profitable for these cyber criminals. And with phishing as a service and ransomware as a service, the cost of launching these attacks, it's low. And a cyber attack, again, can yield thousands or even millions of dollars in revenue for this criminal. Having a proven, predictable business model, unfortunately, has attracted a lot of people to the dark web. And with that, you know, we've also attracted investors or other folks looking to make money in this space as well. And in a market where money can be made, you're going to find a pool of talented individuals. So this particular job posting is for a software designer on the dark web. The position has a starting salary of just under $800,000. And over the course of 2 years, if this person stays in their role, they would be slated to make over $1 million in benefit. Now, I will honestly say, again, if they are paying somebody this amount of money to breach our information and steal our information, imagine the amount of revenue that this individual is bringing into this space. You know, I mentioned earlier hearing about cyber attacks in the news. And this is kind of the last screenshot that I want to wrap things up on today. You know, if you keep up to date with things, I'm sure you've heard about Zoom bombings or folks seemingly entering in Zoom meetings where they shouldn't be. Since the COVID-19 pandemic has forced many companies to switch to remote working, Zoom, Teams, and other video conferencing services have really enjoyed the surge in popularity. You know, unfortunately, with this being said, Zoom users has become a target for cyber criminals. There are several Zoom accounts that are currently either for sale or being given away just for free on hacker forums on the dark web. The credentials themselves haven't been obtained from Zoom in any sort of security or infrastructure attack to Zoom. However, you know, how these uninvited guests are winding up in the meeting is because folks are sharing their Zoom links in public forums. Now, I bring up public forums as such things like Facebook and LinkedIn because with, again, COVID-19, we've seen a lot of folks move to having virtual happy hours or virtual hangouts with their friends. I've seen several people just post their Zoom links straight onto Facebook or LinkedIn to have people join. And unfortunately, cyber criminals are stealing those Zoom links and selling them on the dark web. And that's how Zoom bombing attacks are happening. And in all honesty, Zoom bombing attacks don't financially affect you, but it could affect your relationship with a prospect or a customer if you have unwanted guests joining these Zoom meetings. I will honestly say there's been several accounts of cyber criminals joining Zoom meetings and just saying off the wall things or unflattering things to the folks that are part of the meeting. So just one thing that I want to leave on, think twice before sharing your Zoom link or your team link in a public forum. Now, With that all being said, I know I've talked a lot about the doom and gloom today. I've shown screenshots from the dark web. I've brought up, phishing attacks. Major events like the coronavirus pandemic create new opportunities for cyber criminals to exploit companies every day. But smart defense doesn't let them. These tips can help keep our systems and data safer in these uncertain times. The first thing that I want to mention, please partner with a trusted security advisor. We're all busy in our everyday job functions. We're all business owners. We're all executives, managers. But outside of that, we have families, we have friends. We're moving into the holiday season, and we all are busy. We don't have time on our plate. So make sure you're working with somebody that understands data. Change your passwords regularly. Again, if you're somebody that's recycling and reusing passwords, make sure that you change them. And I'm not talking about adding a 1, 2, 3 at the end or an exclamation point. I'm talking about changing the entire password, just again, so cyber criminals can't back channel their way through your account. Monitor your company's domain for alerts that your company's information is being sold on the dark web. Think about this. Within our businesses, we house data in so many different applications and websites that are not our own. We accept their security controls when we're logging into those sites. So again, we can have the best firewall in place, but if Amazon gets breached or your customer records get breached or whatever system is housing them, your information winds up on the dark web and you would have no idea if you weren't monitoring. Try to use a VPN connection when working. Again, don't open any unknown emails just because those could be malicious attachments within those or links. Update your software regularly. I know how annoying it can be when you see that little pop-up that it's time for your computer to go through an update. But don't just ignore those. You need to update your system. Cyber criminals live on vulnerability and unpatched data. So again, make sure everything's up to date. Try to use multi-factor identification or two-factor authentication when logging into your account. Again, just for an extra layer of security. Use work devices for work purposes and personal devices for personal purposes. This is one that I'm going to stress, especially with this year. Seen a lot of folks having to work from home and using their own laptops. With that being said, create a remote employee work policy if you don't have one that outlines what to do in a scenario that somebody is using a personal laptop that's been breached. With all this being said, I want to talk about a concept that a lot of businesses are moving in towards, and it's the zero trust model. Because of these changes to our work environment, we've seen a lot of companies moving to operating under the zero trust model. Traditionally, I think businesses think of data security almost like a castle and a moat concept. In a castle and a moat concept security, we trust everybody that works at our company to have access to our data. Or in this scenario, we give them access to our castle. We put a moat or a firewall around our data or our castle, and we think that we're protected. The problem with this approach is that once an attacker gains access to your network or your castle, they now have free reign over your company's most sensitive data. For this reason, we see the castle and moat concept fail when it comes to data security. Also, again, companies no longer have their data in just one place. Today, information is spread across multiple vendors, applications, and websites, which makes it more and more difficult to have a single layer of security and control for an entire network. So zero trust and the concept simply means that not everybody is trusted by default from inside or outside our network or moat, and that verification is required by anybody trying to gain access to our network. With all this being said, I want to pass things back over to Angie and let her take things away.
Katie, thank you so much. One of the things that we're really big on here at Reclamere is that when we talk about scary things, we also make sure to give you actionable information that you can use, whether or not you're our client, whether or not you choose to have us do any work for you. The other thing I want to stress is that security has now become a professional area of expertise. Security professionals and the companies like Reclamere that do managed security services are the equivalent to your data, what your CPA is to your money. And so you may have very, very competent people inside of your company who are bookkeepers and controllers, but you still have a CPA that comes in, takes a look at things, makes sure that all of your controls are in place. data is the currency of the 21st century. And what Reclamere does is we make sure that the controls and all of the things that you have in place to protect yourself are truly going to protect you. And by using a managed security services provider, whether it's Reclamere or another company, you are taking that burden, that heavy lifting of security off of your operational IT staff so that they can focus on keeping your systems running, and we can have their backs keeping your systems secure. So whether or not you have firewalls, whether or not you think you have the best antivirus, if you're not doing the very last step in this zero trust slide, which is monitor for compromise, then you truly do not have a secure environment. In many of these breaches that we read about, the bad guys were in the network for days, weeks, and months before they were ever discovered. And we have affordable, transparent, and compliant services that can help you know those types of things might be happening at the instant that they're happening. We can track that, that behavior, and we can tell you what's not normal. So this is the part of the presentation where I want to put your mind at ease that whether it's working with Reclamere or another vendor, there is help out there, and you can afford that help, and you can protect yourself against these really scary things that are happening out there on not only the dark web, but just folks trying to get into your systems. So with that, I want to thank Katie, and I also want to pass it back to Angie Yazelitis to see if we've had any questions. And if you haven't gotten a question in, I encourage you, now would be the time. You can go ahead and pick Katie and I's brain and take advantage of some free consulting.
Absolutely. We do have a couple questions coming in. You know what? It always amazes me, I have to say, as a marketing and communication strategist, how well done those phishing and dark web things are. I mean, they're so well done, professional, and hard to detect. Every time I hear this, it amazes me. So, okay, so let's see what we have here. Okay, this is a good one. Can personal emails be monitored?
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't mind, I'll jump in here and answer this question. So the answer is yes, in the short version. We can certainly monitor personal emails. We also monitor your company's domain and all the emails attached to that for signs of the exposed credentials. And I honestly recommend having your personal email under monitoring, especially if you're a business owner that travels or you have employees that travel on a regular basis, just because employees can check into hotels, for example, using their personal email to get rewards points, but they'll use your company credit card to put down. So making sure that you have personal emails under monitoring can, again, help stop a cyber criminal from back channeling their way into your data or your business's data.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that, in the 21st century right now, 2020, if you're still running your business from a Hotmail or a Gmail or, God forbid, an AOL email account, that really doesn't give your clients much comfort level in your technology level of expertise. And I know for many, many small and individual business owners, it's just super easy to have one email that you get into and one email where you can check everything. But, Angie can speak to the professional appearance that having your own domain, you don't even have to have your own website. If you can get a domain and have email with it for just a few dollars a month, that is very secure. But it just raises the level of professionalism and your professional image that you're giving out, as well as think about the fact that if the bad guys get into your personal email and you're using that personal email for your business, now they're into both your personal bank accounts, your business bank accounts, and it is really hard when there are fraud investigations and companies like Reclamere get called in to help a company recover from that. it is really, really challenging for us to try to find the digital evidence that the lawyers and folks need in order to clean that kind of a mess up.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue into a question from a small business that's asking about affordability. Just saying, I'm a small business owner. Can you speak more on the affordability?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that Reclamere does is we take a very consultative approach. There is no one size fits all. And so just like you wouldn't go to the car dealership and, not have a budget in mind, if you sit down with us and we go through a checklist with you of areas of concern to see where you're most vulnerable, or we do one of our no-cost network scans for you, we will sit down and design a program for you that fits your budget. And you absolutely today have got to have a budget for IT security, not just your IT equipment, not just your internet costs, but your IT security budget. And we will help you figure out what that is. And we will help you figure out how to go from nothing or near nothing, maybe just antivirus, and get you on a path to increasingly getting you more secure. So absolutely don't ever think that I can't afford this, because the great thing is that the prices of tools that we used to only be able to afford to use in our Fortune 500 clients, those prices on those tools have now come down to the point that we can do those services for small and mid-sized businesses in an affordable way.
That's wonderful. Okay, so I have a couple other questions with regards to the whole, dark web exposure. So as a small business, or a mid-sized business, should I be worried about additional exposure on the dark web after having things like a domain scan?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Katie.
No, Angie, go ahead. I do apologize.
Well, one of the most important things that we do is Reclamere is not a scan and dump company where we come in and we run a bunch of tools and then dump a whole bunch of data on you and walk away. What we do is we bring context to the data that we find. So for instance, if we find, as we do in almost every single scan, that credentials, work email and passwords have been exposed on the dark web, we give you the context of that. So let me give you an example. If we do a dark web scan and find out that you have a staff member whose work credentials, were used in on the Ashley Madison site. Now, Ashley Madison was a site for married people to meet other people to cheat with. Well, that's a really delicate issue. And how are you going to handle that? First of all, you have probably a policy violation that you should not have been doing that. But you also have the potential that if this isn't handled right, to create an incredible amount of harm to their family. Another example, when we see developers internal at a company who are using their work email address and credentials that have been compromised on the dark web, that's a big problem, because oftentimes those open source sites like GitHub, where they may be posting code or they may be pulling code for your internal operations, if their credentials are exposed, then the bad guys have access into the code vault that could house information that is your own intellectual property. It could be information you've used in patents. It could be highly, highly sensitive information. So we need to give you the context of what we found, and then we give you guidance, whether it's HR guidance in how to handle uncomfortable findings like Ashley Madison, or how to handle potential legal issues around compromised credentials in code repositories and those types of things, and then help you figure out how to create security awareness for your staff, because we don't want to then take this report and go beat employees over the head and punish them. We want to educate, help you have the tools to educate. So yeah, it's super important, not that you just know that they're out there. I can tell you right now, 99% of you, they're out there. It's a question of understanding what you should do next once you find out they're out there.
Okay.
And Katie, please add on to that if there's anything else you'd like to add.
No, in all honesty, I think you hit the nail on the head with your explanation.
Okay. It looks like we have 2 more questions. So this is sort of a take off of that one. So as far as how a dark web service protects my organization, you kind of went into that, but does it matter? It doesn't sound like it matters size. I think the question is, does it matter size of organization? Does every organization need to?
Yeah, Katie, please speak to that. I think you're best suited.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's kind of a shift in mindset. You know, in the past, we saw it was the Fortune 500 companies that were being targeted by cyber criminals. That's no longer the case. I think we've really seen things change over the past 2 years. Cyber criminals, unfortunately, are choosing more modest targets. They understand that small to medium-sized businesses, they don't necessarily have all the same security controls in place that a Fortune 500 company does or a larger company does. So with that being said, the smaller businesses without these different security controls in place, cyber criminals are preying on you because they know that they can get through to your data more easily, and they can just breach more smaller businesses and still get the quantity of the data, and it's less of a hassle this way. So in all honesty, you know, any size company needs to be concerned about security controls. You definitely want to have your domain under monitoring. That way, again, if a third-party service that you're utilizing becomes breached and your information is exposed on the dark web, you're aware and you can kind of remediate things from there. I always joke that dark web monitoring, it's kind of like lane assist for your car. You know, you don't get in your car in the morning and you think, today's the day that I'm going to unfortunately get into an accident. You have your things like lane assist and, you know, your car insurance to be there to protect you. And it's the same thing like dark web monitoring. You know, it's there in the scenario that a data breach does occur. And I think, Angie, you said it best earlier in the presentation. In this world that we live in, it's no longer if we're going to be a target of a cyber criminal. It's more so when we're going to be a target of a cyber criminal.
Yeah, and the one point I'd like to put on that is that, you know, it's not just that your employees are using their usernames and passwords on sites. As Katie said, there could be a vendor of yours that had a breach, and that's why your users' credentials are on the dark web. So when we look at the source of the breach and we start to track that down, because it's not always clear, there are times where it just tells us that it was from an ID theft forum and we got to go out and do some digging. We could find out that one of your major vendors had a data breach and they just never told you, or they had a data breach and they notified someone in your company, but it never made it to the right people that needed to know what to do about it. So it's super important to understand regardless of your size. And finally, the last thing about that is that the cyber criminals also understand that because the large companies are so well fortified and so well protected that they also know that we as small businesses are the contractors and subcontractors to those large companies. And so if they are able to get into our systems, like the HVAC company in Pittsburgh, who was the root cause of the massive Target data breach, that was a hack that took a long time to get into that system of that HVAC contractor who was using an out-of-date Windows operating system, and then was able to work their way into the Target environment through a system that they used for vendors just to pay their bills or just to pay their vendors. So it's super important.
Okay. So last question is, okay, so I'm modestly concerned. Where do I start?
I think the most important thing is, you know, everybody is going to get a follow-up email after this webinar that will include the presentation and a link to this recording. It will also include an offer of a no-cost dark web analysis for your company. And with that, you'll get a chance. You know, I like to say, try before you buy. You know, if you don't like working with Reclamere, or we don't like working with you, we might not be a good fit, but at least you'll be able to take advantage of trying out working with us and seeing what that experience is like and getting some very valuable information about what's going on the dark web with your company right now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It doesn't look like we have any other questions, so I think I'll go ahead and just thank everyone for spending some of your morning with us. And the contact information is still up on the screen, so please feel free to jot it down. You can obviously, Reclamere would welcome a consultation with any of you. So as Angie just mentioned, we hope you take advantage of that free dark web scan. That's being offered to anyone who's joined us today. And as she said, we'll share that information with you in an email. We'll share the recording with you. So over the next day or so, or throughout the next week, you'll be getting that information. In the meantime, if you are compelled, reach out to us. We're here. So Katie or Angie, do you have any additional closing thoughts?
I'll give Katie the last word, so I'll go first. When you get the presentation in the follow-up email, slides 9 and 25 are your how to stay safe checklist. Both of those slides in this presentation give you the things to evaluate within your own company before you even reach out to a professional security firm like Reclamere for assistance. So if nothing else, if you take nothing else away from today, take advantage of our no-cost dark web analysis for you, and take slides 9 and 25 and sit down with your key staff and walk through those points to see, do you have people trained on those things? Do you have those types of things in place?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just to kind of wrap things up, I hope today's webinar was educational. We wanted it to be a value add where you learned a little bit of something about the digital world and the increasing risks that we're truly living in. With all that being said, if you had any doubts about your own data security, your presence on the dark web, or any questions in general about IT infrastructure, please don't hesitate to reach out. Any question is a good question. We want to make sure that you're comfortable in this space talking about your data, and we want to make sure that you feel secure with your data as well as these risks continue to grow. So again, please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. Angie and the Reclamere team, we're more than happy to assist with anything.
Awesome. Well, we just want to thank everyone. Have a safe rest of your day, and we will be in touch with you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.